Am I a better creator than Jeff Nippard? I would have to say yes. Oh wait, is that Jeff over there? Let's go do it. All jokes aside, guys, Jeff's obviously an awesome creator. You guys probably knew about him long before you knew about me. But for the next question is a lot of conflicting opinions about how to train triceps. So I'm gonna toss it over to Jeff. Let him tell you what his opinion is.
Who's conflicting about these opinions?
I don't know.
I'm just
everybody.
I'm just joking. So wait, what's the question?
The question is, in your opinion, what's kind of the best way to go about training triceps?
So I think historically my approach would have been you have kind of a bread and butter movement. That could be like your bench press, something that you can overload progressively. Okay. So I think you should have that in as a staple. I think there's a trend toward like, oh, what's the best like isolation exercise? But I like to have a compound. So that can be a bench press with a slightly closer grip. Even a wider grip is still going to smash the triceps pretty well. Or a dip, or something that you can overload progressively over time and feel motivated to do that.
Yeah, absolutely.
And then with your isolation stuff, I would say you definitely want something that's going to have a high degree of stretch. So there you're looking at your overhead extensions. Okay. So I would probably tend to favor a cable movement just because you get more continuous tension. But I think something like a skull crusher is fine too if you don't have cable access. Mm-hmm. You do also overload the stretch more with that movement too. That would probably be my first thing to go to. And then I would say since the long head crosses the shoulder joint, you want to vary your shoulder position. So you want something overhead, something with the arm more in neutral, which could be knocked out by your bench press, and then something with the arm more hyperextended, which would be where the kickback would come in.
Right.
Yeah.
Sounds pretty similar to the mechanical drop set that we do. So if you had, let's say you was a tricep-oriented workout and you had two exercises that are your absolute favorite to do, what would those two exercises be? It doesn't have to be like of all time. Just
no,
like,
for sure.
If you were to do it today.
So I really like this katana cable extension. Have you done those? Mm-hmm. Overhead. So I would do that as kind of like a more stretch-oriented movement. And then I would probably do a kickback as my other one.
Nice.
Because then you have the shoulder in two different positions. I don't know that the current temperature on the kickback, but yeah, I've been doing them more upright with the shoulder more back behind the torso.
Yeah, I saw that the other day and I'd never seen that variation before, so it was interesting to see. So like when I do my, I guess you wouldn't really call it a kickback, but when I do my mechanical drop set, I do have my arms like fairly far back, which pretty much makes it into a kickback.
Right, I've noticed that.
Yeah, I'd like to know your opinion on like how far back do you like to keep your arm? Do you put it all the way back or is it just kind of slightly behind?
I would say about here. So like, is that maybe
it's
like
not crazy. It's not like you're hyperextending the shoulder.
Yeah, I'm not
like
super far back. I would say maybe 20 to 30 degrees back behind neutral.
Do you know Jeffrey Verity Schofield?
I do, yeah.
Well, so him and I kind of train our triceps a little bit similarly, where we'll always get like a little bit, like after we reach failure, we'll always get a little bit of body English involved for the tris.
Okay.
Do you like to do that yourself or no, not really?
I wouldn't say I do it myself, but I think it's not a terrible idea. Again, I would say this is where you get a little bit into the weeds and it's a little bit more personal preference because like I think the research on like two failure training isn't as conclusive as a lot of people think. Obviously there was the latest meta-analysis. It did show that it does seem to be better to go to 0 RIR than 2 RIR. There was another meta-analysis that showed no difference.
Right.
So I mean like it's not a smoking gun case for even failure. So then I think you have even less of a smoking gun case for like going beyond failure.
Yeah.
I personally like to do it and it's fun to challenge yourself and I don't have a problem with the body English thing. I don't think there's a good argument against it. I don't think it increases risk of injury. I don't think you need to be so neurotic that you're like, oh, now it's impossible to track kind of thing. So I think it's fine. I tend to keep the tricep stuff more on lock. I tend to do more of the cheating on back movements actually because the strength curve I think makes it a little bit more advantageous to use momentum toward the end. But
no, I go nuts on back stuff.
Yeah, okay. So we're on the same page there. Yeah. No, I think the science-based crowd gets a little bit carried away with the like perfect form to the point that it's like, can you really like get into it if you're super uptight about your technique? So yeah, I think there's a sweet spot for everybody.
No, I completely agree. No, and I think you'll find that a lot of creators who are a bit more science-based, we talk very particular, like to the camera about certain things, but then there's always variability. And it's like, it doesn't do as well to talk about things from a gray context. So what happens a lot of times, people will be very black and white on subjects, but obviously you can get great results. Like if you're going to failure versus 1 RIR, 2 RIR, if you appropriately adjust your volume, like there's so much you can do in order to make it work.
I even appreciate that more now that I've started doing short form content. Like, there is not time for nuance.
No.
So like, even with the kickback video, it's like, oh, you love kickbacks. And it's like, no, like my favorite exercise is probably an overhead cable extension. But at the same time, like, I can't disclaim every video with like, by the way, this is where it fits into the hierarchy. Like, you just don't have time to do that, right? So,
how do you feel about JM presses?
I actually just recently started doing them. I've been doing them on a Smith machine because I would say one of the first times I did them was in a workout I did with Dr. Mike. And I think they're good. I sometimes feel my elbows a little bit weird. So,
like, I'll recommend them for other people who don't have elbow issues with them. But for me, if I keep my elbows up while I do them, I just get so much strain on the inner elbow. So like, if I'm gonna do it, I'll typically do like the hybrid form where I allow my elbows to sink, because otherwise I just experience too much elbow pain while doing it.
Yeah, I'm the same way. Yeah.
Yeah. And there you go. See, another exercise that is technically, like, a lot of people would consider optimal, but for guys like us, maybe it isn't. And maybe it might not be the case for you. But now, the most heated discussion you're ever gonna see is, what do Jeff Nippard and I disagree on? So I would say the main thing, and I don't even know if we disagree, to be honest, but I'll see what your take is on it. I found, at least for myself and for a lot of people that I work with, power building just didn't work very well for them when it came to hypertrophy. Now, I'm not saying they didn't make good gains initially when it came to it, but they hit a progression wall, hypertrophically speaking, compared to when they went strictly into more bodybuilding format training.
Sure, yeah. I mean, I can't deny their experience. So if it's just an experience thing, then sure. I think that if I was going to frame my case the strongest, it would be like, power building is better than pure bodybuilding for bodybuilding. I don't think that that's true on average, but I think for some people it is true. I think for me, at points in my career, it has been true, and that mostly, I think, stems from a motivation standpoint. I just don't find it necessarily motivating to come in and do like incline Smith machine press and be like, oh, I got an incline Smith machine press PR today. Whereas if I set a bench press PR, I'm highly motivated by that. So I would say my strongest argument in favor of power building would be psychological. And since that's so individual, it just can't apply across the board, right? So would you, for your case, would you say that power building is worse for bodybuilding for everybody?
Ooh, see, that would be an interesting one to get into the weeds on, because obviously you need to enjoy your training. You need to have something that's motivating you to keep going. So my general opinion on it would be, if you are 100% motivated with the type of training you're doing, either way, then I would probably say, like, not having a regular squat pattern in there, but opting more towards something like a hack squat, or not necessarily. Now, what I will say is this: I think a lot of it depends on your leverages too. So like, a guy like you, when I took a look at your training and I took a look at the way that you power built, I was like, it makes a lot more sense for you than me. Because when you do a squatting pattern, you're capable of good knee flexion over the top, you're capable of staying up. I can't. Like, I'm a good morning, like, hey, it doesn't work for me.
That's fair. So there's a lot we could get into with this, but I think the place to start, or probably the simplest way to go, so it's not like a 20-minute debate, would be rank the squat for bodybuilding. Because when we're talking about power building, we're talking about the inclusion of the squat, bench press, and deadlift, right? So do they belong in a bodybuilding routine? So we could just treat them individually, right? So squat, I think it can be great for a bodybuilding routine. It has pros and cons. Again, if you're arguing from your specific case of where your leverage is like, don't allow the squat to lend itself great to, like, say, quad stimulation or whatever, then like that's a specific case. But I think for most people, you're gonna see pretty freaking high quad and glute activation from a standing barbell squat. Like you just will. I think it's a great movement. I think the case against it would be it takes a lot of time to, like, get warmed up, and so you kill a lot of time doing non-stimulative warm-up sets when squatting. So that's I think a perfectly fair consideration. You could get a similar stimulus on a hack squat with less total warm-up time, and then other people run into, like, joint issues and stuff like that. But I don't know if you'd want to argue that, like, the back squat is a bad bodybuilding exercise.
Oh, okay, I see what you're saying.
Do you know what I mean?
Yeah. No, and I think if we're getting out of, like, the 2-3% maybe difference between them, I would say that if you have good form and you're adjusting properly to the way that you perform them, so even like for me, if I was to do a barbell back squat, I'd do it heels elevated.
Okay.
Because it would just make more sense for my leverages to do it that way. But I would say the stability factor for a lot of people ends up playing a pretty big role.
Yeah.
And that can make a difference in the long run, but obviously if you're squatting 700 pounds with perfect upright technique, you're probably going to develop pretty freaking big quads.
Yeah. And then we could go through the other two. I think what I was building to was like I think the bench press is also good, even though there are also great alternatives. The deadlift is the one that I feel like you could say maybe you could axe that from a pure bodybuilding routine, and you'd be better off replacing it with just like a Romanian deadlift.
So I would
agree with that.
I would probably agree that if I had to rank order them for bodybuilding specifically, I'd say the squat's the best one.
Yep.
I'd say then the bench press, then the deadlift.
I would agree with that.
Yeah.
There we go.
That's the thing. I think we would agree on a lot of things. Like maybe like you would place a little bit more emphasis on them, and I place a little bit less emphasis on them.
Yeah.
But I don't think that means that you're not going to build good quads and especially like even good glutes and adductors if you squat consistently with great technique.
Yeah.
I would say the bench press did the least for me. Oh, sorry. No, the deadlift did the least for me.
Right. I can see that.
The bench press second, and then squat. Obviously, it builds a good base.
So for the record, I am releasing a pure bodybuilding program in a couple weeks, and it does not have a barbell back squat, bench press, or deadlift.
Ooh.
So like, and that isn't because I think that they're bad bodybuilding exercises. It's more so from an efficiency standpoint.
Right.
It has a lot to do with like the warm up and the fatigue that they create. And so most of my audience also has strength goals, and that's partly because I'm also a power lifter. I've done as much powerlifting as I've done bodybuilding. But for people who literally all they care about is building more muscle, I don't know if the squat, bench, and deadlift, I definitely wouldn't call them mandatory.
Right.
And I don't know if they are better than alternatives. They have upsides and downsides, like any exercise, But I would say for pure bodybuilding purposes, you can get the same stimulus for less fatigue with other exercises. So why not choose those if you don't have any strength goals?
Yeah.
Right?
Oh, okay. So then I think we'd probably be pretty much on the same
I think
page
we are.
on
I think
that.
we are much more.
Yeah.
I just like powerlifting, and I
Yeah.
like the athletic aspect of it. And I think where we might disagree a little bit would be in the degree to which they're less favorable. Like I think for me, I think it's like a perfectly fine option, especially if you have more time to train. I think you might be like, they are suboptimal than some other variations, which that degree of suboptimality is probably what we disagree about.
I think there's probably the biggest difference between our opinions on it probably comes down to the fact that you have like really good leverages for those movements to develop good muscle. Where me, like I swear to you, like when I squatted, it was like so hard for me to get a proper quad stimulus. But for you, you're obviously growing good quads doing squats.
Right. So and then in that case, I would say, don't do them for you. Like I wouldn't be like, oh no, you need to work on your mobility and like figure out a way to make this work. And I would just say, no, there's plenty of other options.
Right.
Yeah. So.
Yeah, I think. I would say that we probably agree a lot more on this topic than people would think, just by looking at our general like content. So. And I feel like there's a lot of topics like that for the creators in general where we agree on like 99% of things. It's just more interesting to talk about the 1% to the general audience.
And it becomes a matter of emphasis as well, right? Like what do you spend more time talking about? It doesn't necessarily scale with like your strength of opinion on that thing. It's just what you find more interesting.
Well, I tried to explain to somebody the other day. They were like, dude, why are you not just like talking about the base type? It's like,
I get that a lot.
It's like, because we already know that a bicep curl grows the biceps well.
It's boring.
Everybody knows that.
It's boring. Nobody cares.
Wants to hear, hey, okay, let's talk about the fact that bicep curls grow biceps.
Yeah.
We already know it.
Exactly. No, I feel you. No, we're on, 100% on the same page with that.
It's been a while since you've competed in bodybuilding.
Yep.
Do you have any plans to compete in the future?
No. Not immediate plans, but I will compete again at some point.
You will?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. But not this year or next year.
How old are you?
32.
32.
Yeah.
So you'd be thinking more like late 30s or?
Probably around, I've got like 35 in mind.
Okay.
Yeah, so another few years.
Because you probably didn't see it, but when I was ranking my top 5 naturals that people would know online, like you were.
Oh yeah?
Yeah.
I appreciate that, man. Thank you.
I think your physique is crazy.
Yeah. The thing about bodybuilding, man, is like it's such a slow grind, and lifestyle is so challenging, you know.
Yeah.
But no, I still love the sport, and I'll get on stage again soon. But I don't have a date in mind.
No, I will be very excited to see that, because like your shape and your sizes.
Thank you, man. Thank you. No,
crazy.
likewise. Yeah, I saw your stage stuff. You got a fantastic physique as well.
Appreciate that.
All right, man.
All right.
It's been fun. All right.
Well, that was an unexpected appearance in our Q&A, so I hope you guys enjoyed it. A lot of good perspective. If you guys don't know this already, I don't know how it came across on camera, but I respect the heck out of Jeff. He was a big part of the reason why I got into this in the first place, and I can't thank him enough. So, Jeff, if you're watching this, thank you for being in the video. Thank you for inspiring me and thousands of other people growing up and getting into lifting. Honestly, we owe a lot to you, so I really appreciate that. TNF out.